All right, and welcome back to part
Thank
two. Yes. Okay. All right. So we'll put a recap in the notes of what happened. But if you have not seen part one, you definitely want to go back and start there. We're going to go ahead and jump into part two on call the elders, right? Call the
you.
elders. How can the elders help you? What happens when you call the elders? All right, so let's go ahead and take it from here. Let's hear about the rest of your story.
Well, when I like I said, I had called the elders and I was trying to, the doctors had wanted to put me in a group home, and I was trying to find a hall to go to. Like I said last week, when the brother who I don't know what happened, he hated me because whenever I would have a congregation call him to find out if I was in good standing so I could go out of ministry, the elders would talk to me, they completely rejected me. And so what the people in YouTube land need to understand, when a Jehovah's Witness changes congregations, they have a letter that goes, the body of elders from the congregation they're leaving will give them a letter that basically a letter of introduction that tells that person that they're a good person or what their problems are, whatever. But the problem with that is the person never reads it. It's not a letter that the person is supposed to see. This is strictly with the elder. So what I realized was that when I changed congregation, this letter is going to go with me. So no matter where I go, whatever this man, whatever reason he hates me, or whatever he's saying about me, it's going to go with me. And so this is what the new congregation is going to think of me. So I was being Tyshawn. I really got on my hands and knees and I prayed, how am I supposed to do this? Because like that article that you're referring to says, the elders are supposed to be our friends. The elders are supposed to love us and care for us. And here, my elders, I felt like are trying to kill me spiritually. What am I supposed to do? And then they tell you you need to respect the older men in your congregation. Don't go against them. Do what they say. But I felt like this particular brother was trying to kill me spiritually. I can't obey him. So I guess you could say this is when I'm starting to wake up, because I'm thinking I can't obey him. And I prayed about it, and the scripture, and I was looking for a scriptural precedent for whatever I did. And the scriptural precedents that I came up with I don't see my Bible up here, but the scripture precedents that I came up with was when Saul was trying to kill David, and he threw the spear and tried to pin him to the wall. David ran, and Michael said, "Run away, because if you stay, you'll be a dead man by morning." So what I had actually gotten into my head that I was going to do, I got it into my head that I was just going to leave town, leave the city, and I was going to go to another hall and start over. Start like I was. I've heard of people doing this who have been shunned.
Yeah, I've
They'll
heard of
pick
that
another
too.
hall and they'll start over as if they're baptized, as if they're a Bible study, and they're not baptized, trying to get baptized. And that's what I had decided to do. I decided that I was going to just go to this other hall or wherever in another city, change my name, and just change my identity. Because in my mind, the anointing of Jehovah, this elder, was trying to kill me, like Saul tried to kill David. But before I did that, I flipped. And one day I sent a group message to all the elders, and I told them, Jehovah don't live at your house. Jehovah don't live here. That's why we got so many problems. And I told them all, I went straight up Miriam. and if anybody is a witness, if they can imagine a brother doing that, but imagining a sister
Yeah.
telling the whole body of elders that you ain't got it going on, that you don't have God's spirit, that was counseling and woo.
Yeah, yeah, and for the people that are watching, I think it's important to go back a little bit and talk about how the elders became like your spiritual fathers. And so um it had to be pretty deep for you to get to the point where you felt that way, right? It had to be a lot of emotions that were going in your, you were going through personally for you to even react that way because you respected them so much. We talked about it before. Talk a little bit about how before all this happened, how did you feel like you kind of became the one of their favorite sisters because
was a
you were
favorite
bringing
sister.
everybody to them, right?
Yeah, I was a favorite sister because when I was a teenager, like I said, when I was reporting the kids, my peers to their parents and to the elders, I don't remember this one girl, so I guess I did it 4 times. But I only did it like 3 or 4 times. It doesn't take long for you to get a reputation. So after like the fourth time, they were like, "You gotta stay away from Tyshawn. She'll take you to the brother. She'll tell your mama. So it wasn't like I took 20 or 30 people to the brothers because my peers didn't give me that opportunity. I'm serious. It was only like 3 or 4. But when I did that, I became like sort of like the elder's pet. And I was giving a talk almost every week. We had like demonstrations on how to present the ministry, the books in the ministry. If a young girl came into the hall and needed a Bible study, the brothers was having her study with me. Um, I, just to make a long story short, I studied with about 400 people.
Wow.
Yeah, I studied with about 400 people. I've actually aided 13 people into the witnesses. I've even, they're very strict, which I suggest to everybody to read The Shepherd, the Flock of God, the new elder book, because a lot has changed. But when I
Yes.
was when I was younger, the sisters could do things if there were no brothers. Now they're really cracking down. They don't want the sisters to do anything. They're even saying that the worldly men, who we can't marry them, but they could come in and do things in the Kingdom Hall before a sister can. But when
Mm.
I was young, I actually read for 2 book studies. I read they didn't have any brothers. It was just an elder conducting. And I read for 2 book studies. I,
Right.
in one congregation, I spent like 60 and 70 hours a month filling out the territory. I helped with the territory card.
Mm.
I was actually in a training with two elders because in order to do the territory card, the reason why I was chosen is I was the only one that knew how to do this computer software. It was Word 2012, no 2007. I was the only one that knew how to do Word 2007, and they gave me this assignment, and then 2012 came up. And since I had did so good on 2012, I actually was with 2 elders being trained to learn how to do the 2012 um, Excel software so I could do these territory cards. I mean, I had so many privileges. I went to unassigned territory and settled work territory 4 times.
Wow.
I was well on my way to being somebody until my mental illness kicked in. But yeah, all of that I did, and the way I treated my mom and stuff. Oh, I was rewarded. I really was. I was rewarded for that, and I was held in high regard up until this last congregation. I don't know what happened in this last congregation to make the elders turn on me, but every congregation before that, I was I was queen. I was Tyshawn Sister Knight, very respected, very respected. I was the kind
Right.
of sister that if the elders weren't available, the other sisters would call me and ask my advice. I was the kind of sister, they knew that I studied, for 4 or 5 hours, and they thought it was just me being a very spiritual minded sister. They didn't know it was a problem. And I actually had sisters ask me to teach them how to study. So I was very well, respected because of what I as a result of all the stuff that I had did that was kind of off the chain. I was very well rewarded for that.
Right, right. Sorry about that. I wanted to make sure I didn't get my battery didn't die. But so let's talk a little bit about the last congregation, right? So
Mhm.
you had kind of gotten used to talking to the elders. They were helpful all while you were going through your teen years. But what happened at this last congregation? What was the last straw for you?
Well, I'm getting emotional. I'm trying to like filter because I don't want to just go into everything they did that was um unspiritual. But like I said, the mentally ill are treated very badly amongst Jehovah's Witnesses. When I was um that was my waking up, realizing how bad they did not understand and dislike the mentally ill. And okay, let me pray for a minute. I don't want to get emotional,
Yeah, take
but
your time.
I'm just gonna give you some. So the sixth circuit overseer that would ban me from the Kingdom Hall when he came to our congregation the first time. I went up to him and because I had asked the brothers for an assignment. And from my background, you could tell that I just wanted to be with the congregation. They were basically telling me, no, you're too sick, just recognize your limitations. And that made me very angry. And so I went to the circuit overseer, and the brother told me, recognize your limitations. Don't worry, you'll be able to serve Jehovah in the new system.
Mm.
And so I got so mad, and I thought to myself, look, I, I don't know where you get your Bible. I didn't say this to. I wasn't vocal yet, but I said my Bible says that if I have the faith of a mustard seed, then I can move a mountain.
Mm.
I can move a mountain. Then I don't have any limitations.
I
Then
think
I
I
had a
think
friend who had studied the Bible for 10 years. At this point, it was like 8 years. He had been studying the Bible for 8 years. He had a mental illness, and they would not help him. I talked to the elder that was studying with him, and the elder told me the reason why he wasn't bringing people on his study was because he has schizophrenia, and sometimes he talks out of his head, and he didn't want none of the friends to talk about the young man because he was
mm,
young. Now, no, no. So instead of having a talk and counseling the friends about not being compassionate to the mentally ill, he chose to study with this young man for 8 years and not bring nobody on the study. So this young man goes to the hall now and still don't even really know anybody.
wow. And I we talked about that a little bit before. As a crisis specialist, um I had a lot of clients that would come that were dealing with, SMI or, serious mental illness. And um it was amazing to me how elders, they do not have any type of training. They don't
Mm-mm.
have any type of schooling or training. And I do understand, I said this once before, I definitely understand I have my degree in psychology, and I also have that lived experience, right? I understand that there were some of my peers that I went to college with that actually had a degree in psychology, but they don't have any lived experience with religious trauma. And so I think that it's amazing to hear you say how the elders would handle the ones that did have medical diagnosis and not seek any type of outside or counsel to be able to help those, to help their members that were dealing with those type of things. That's just unbelievable.
If I'm encouraging everybody to get the shepherd. Well, I'm gonna post it on my timeline, but they actually have it in the shepherd, the flock.
Hmm.
I'm trying to see where I don't have it with me.
Yeah, we can post it inside the video link. Yeah, we can.
Because they're posted inside the shepherd, the flock book. When it talks, this is the elder book. When it talks about a person committing suicide, thinking about talking about committing suicide,
Yeah, or
it
unaliving themselves. Yes,
it
unaliving
says
themselves.
that, it says that they should read the articles in the Watchtower about it and familiarize themselves, and then be very delicate when they talk to them and loving when they talk to them as they share scriptures with them, because the person is probably depressed and had gone through hard times. It's like 7 lines. It's not even a full paragraph. And then it says, and then read the scriptures to them and leave.
Wow.
And if anybody knows anything about a person that wants to commit suicide, you call the EMS. You get
Yeah.
into a hospital. You
Yeah.
don't sit, and you definitely don't leave.
Yeah, yeah, on the crisis line, I mean, I there were times where I spent hours on the line and I had to stay on the line with that person until our mobile team went out and they were able to get them to be assessed. And especially because what people don't understand is sometimes people they have suicidal ideation baseline, like that is their base. They have a baseline. This is their life, right? And so they have to be given the skills to know when their suicidal ideations are getting high, are they having any a plan, are they getting means together, things like that. And so for them to not even try to seek outside medical attention, not knowing whether that person truly was at risk at that of unaliving themselves, that's just wow.
And and really, I'm gonna tell you, these brothers from this congregation that did this to me, no, I had, because homegirl ain't tried to commit suicide since I've been out of the truth.
That
Always,
wow.
always thinking about it. And they know because they counsel me. This brother that wouldn't even let me go out and field service for another, he knows. They all knew. They all knew. Two of the elders said, the one that said, we will watch your dog while you're in the hospital. That's at first I thought I was in paradise. I was in the hospital and they walked my dog twice.
Mm.
Good. And that's how I found the congregation. But when what happened was I asked them to help me. I guess they thought I was asking for money. But I asked them to help me with be my power of attorney, and that's when everything changed. That's when it changed on me.
Mm.
That's when I made, like I told you last week, the main guy that was messing with me was somebody that I had a crush on, and I made him some green. Looked at me and seen his wife. I don't know what happened, but he turned on me. So back to what happened. I did. I told them all that God delivered their house, and then I recognized that I had did wrong. I recognized that I had did wrong. I was Miriam, and I apologized. I wrote letters. I'm sorry. I sent cards, just trying to make it right. I'm imperfect like everybody else is imperfect.
Right.
Um, then oh, I just remember what I was talking about. As far as my friends, um, there was this young man in the congregation who um was really nice. He was really, I could tell by the way he treated me, he should be a psychologist. He just
Mm,
gift of comforting words and talking to people. He had a gift. And so I asked him to befriend the guy that had been studying for 8 years. And he was like, oh yeah, I'll do it. The next thing I know, he was like afraid to talk to me, and he was afraid to go, say anything. Then I went to the to the overseer who was over, like, the coordinator who's over the whole congregation. I went to him and I said, can you encourage him to just befriend my friend, because he needs a friend. And so the brother was like, oh well, he can't study with him because he's not in his neighborhood. And so then I said, well, I'm not asking him to study, I'm just asking him to be his friend.
right.
It's like, well, he can't be his friend because he's not a doctor.
Wow.
And I was like, and my immediate thought was,
What?
that's why I don't have any friends in this congregation, because
Mm,
none of them are doctors. I
yeah.
said, and then, so to make a long story short, that was one of the things I kept seeing reasons for. I kept seeing that they had a disdain for mentally ill people.
Right.
And, and it was I actually stopped eating. I don't know if you could tell me right now how skinny I am.
Okay.
When I went to the congregation, I was a size 22.
Wow.
1 year, I went from a size 22 to a size 12. I stopped eating and I stopped sleeping. The only thing I was doing was drinking something, drinking water and pop and stuff. I was not eating or sleeping.
Yeah, I think it's important to talk about that too, because a lot of people do not understand the level of depression that happens when you are in the organization. And, it's ironic that when you try to talk to the elders and go to the elders, they tell you to do more of the thing that's already exhausting you, right? So, go and field service more, or maybe you need to go sit in on more Bible studies, right? Instead of giving you an opportunity, well, maybe no, you need to take a step back and you need to take some time to gather yourself together. But of course, as I know, that they don't want that to happen. They need to keep you busy. They need to keep you in that hyper vigilant state so
Right.
that way you can continue to keep going. Because the moment you slow down, or you talk to someone outside of the organization, they'll probably suggest some of the things that we're talking about. Um, let's talk a little bit about, I'm going over my questions as I look down, but let's talk a little bit about, how did the elders treat your mom?
Oh, they they dogged my mom. You know, they would actually. I told you she was into the militant. She was militant. We used to wear braids back in the 80s. We wore braids when they first came out. We were wearing braids before people were wearing braids.
Right. Yeah.
Kids would call me Medusa. That's black kids would call me Medusa because Medusa had the snake. And that was I was being bullied. And basically, the reason why I was being bullied in school was because was practicing Jehovah's Witnesses. And that's what they chose to call me. So that's just the way people felt about braids. So the elders, I'm sitting up here like 14, 15 years old, and the elders would come up, why do y'all wear them braids? You should not wear those braids. Why do you wear African clothes? You should not wear African clothes. And they would come to me and tell me, and I guess they were hoping that I would give the message to my mom.
Right.
But that's wrong. You do not go to the child and tell the child what the mom's supposed to do. But they didn't know I wasn't saying anything to my mom because I knew my mom would have went up there and been like, "Wait a minute," you know. So I
Yeah.
didn't say anything. I didn't say anything to her. But instead, I took out my braids. So I'm being disobedient to my mom. I'm taking out my braids. I'm refusing to wear African clothes because I'm trying to do more in at the home.
And I remember, not to cut you off, but I do remember the time where, because I used to want to get the braids and everything. And I remember a time when all that was happening and how it was presented to us was, you know, having the braids or having certain type of hairstyles is making you be a part of the world, right? So why would you want to be a part of the world by, having these worldly, hairstyles?
Right. And they told me it was because she had the African art, she was just and they really they took away all her privileges and just to make it so bad, this is how bad it was. Just to show you, I had to look up that word misogyny. I never knew what that was. Used that earlier, and I looked it up, and that is just perfect. Witnesses hate women. They hate women. And my mother, the second time she got this fellowship, she started dating a worldly man, which I guess I'm gonna explain worldly and for Jehovah's Witnesses is anybody that's not a Jehovah's Witness. You're in the world. It's sort of like the Amish. The Amish calls everybody who's not Amish English. So
Right.
if you're not a witness, you're worldly and you're bad association. That's it. So she's sitting up here at this fellowship and she starts dating this worldly man and then he starts coming to the hall and while he's at the hall, he starts studying. And the brothers was telling him not to date her because she is bad association. And then what they did was they set him up with a sister that they liked,
Wow.
and he was worldly. But this was all a ploy to get him away from my mom. So they started to introduce him to a sister that they liked. Then one of the elders is gonna call my mother up and say, George, that's my stepfather's name was George. They got married. George is talking to a sister, another sister. He's talking to another sister. And then my mother was like, he probably is. I'm sure he is. He's worldly.
Right.
So
And it's
I'm not confused about him being worldly. You the one that's confused. That's what
yeah,
worldly means too. They talk to other sisters.
yeah.
And
And
then
to be
ask the George, my stepfather,
uh
who do you want to marry? He's a worldly man. And they asked him, who do you want to marry? And my stepfather said, I want to marry Tangine, my mom. And then she got reinstated and came back, and then they got married. But when they got married at the Justice Center, they didn't get married at the hall, but they got married. And then when they were married, they were telling him that he was gonna have to control her because she used to be a police officer. By then she had quit, but she used to be a police officer and she's not gonna be submissive. And they were gonna have to he was gonna have to control her. But they didn't know that, George was very well much a man. He ruled his house, but it made him not he didn't get baptized because of that. He said,
yeah,
these people are crazy. He said, I don't want to be bothered with that, And but when she was with him for a while, she was getting it. She was being persecuted by the elders and being persecuted by George. George was like, "What you want to be with them for? They ain't right."
yeah, 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 I hear you on that. And I think, that's a part of the plot to get you to actually um get, like you said, they wanted him to date a witness woman so that way she can try to convert him, because they could see at that point that your mom was not clearly helping him get converted at all, right?
Right.
Right. Wow,
Yeah.
I'm gonna have to go into a part three. I was reading over the questions that we have. We got a lot to cover. Like I said, you were in it for how many years? How long were you a Jehovah Witness?
755, 40, 40. Well, my mother started when I was 7. She got baptized when I was 7, and I left when I was 54. What is that? 47 years.
Yeah, and that's not including, when your mom was studying when you were 6 months old. So, yeah,
That's
your
just,
story has a lot to tell. Let's see, before we go into part three, because there's going to definitely have to be a part three. How do you want to end this one? How do you want to talk about a little bit about how the characteristics that you had with your mother affected you, or do you want to go ahead and end this recapping what you just talked about, and then we can go into a part three? How would you like to end part two?
I would just like to end it with this statement. I didn't go into detail, but if you have a mental illness, um, and you are studying the Bible with Jehovah's Witnesses, I truly suggest you find another place to go, because I was a beloved sister, and I was treated worldly. If when you watch 3, you'll find out, because that's what we're going to talk about, how bad I was treated in 2024 directly because I had a mental illness. And that was the reason why I left. The reason why I left was because I felt like, and I wanted to expose the fact that they didn't treat people with a mental illness right. And that's the reason why I left. I left because they didn't treat me right. And it was directly stigma because I was a Jehovah's Witness. And I'm black, I'm a woman, and I'm a Jehovah's Witness.
Mm,
And I was treated worse because had a mental illness than all those other 3 things, because I was treated like that not only in the world but also at the Kingdom Hall. The Kingdom Hall, the people that were at the Kingdom Hall who were supposed to love me, dogged me the last 2 years I was in the hall because I had a mental illness.
I'm so sorry that you had to go through
Oh,
that.
I,
I've heard other stories of, they definitely, play on when you have a mental illness, and you're going to be perfect, right, in paradise. So let's just deal with what we have to deal with now. But, in the new world, you're going to be perfect. You're not going to have it. And so you're so busy focused on the new world that you don't really get a chance to learn how to live the fullest you can in life with the disabilities that you have now.
you have spoken the truth.
Yeah.
Spoken the truth. That's the truth. You said it better than me. That's true. That's the truth right there.
Yeah. And then real quick, I like to end on this. Your Linda Listen moment, right? So if you had a Tyshawn Listen moment, what would you tell your younger self?
Um, Go to the doctor, and when you go to the therapist, do what they say. Don't worry about what Jehovah's Witnesses say. Go to the therapist and do what they say. And there was a good elder. I told him that I didn't like going to therapy because I didn't want to bring reproach on Jehovah's name by telling my story. And the elder told me Jehovah can take care of his name.
Oh,
Yeah. And like I said, they were good elders. And
yeah. Yeah, we
appreciate you.
definitely don't want it to make it seem like, we're no longer Jehovah's Witnesses. We know the reasons why we left, and we definitely don't want it to just be all bad experiences. But I think that's a great Tyshawn listen moment. You need God, but you need therapy. I say that all the time. You need God, but you need therapy. And unfortunately, in this religion and a lot of religions, that are high control, they don't want you to seek that outside therapy because, like I said in my video, when I decided to sit down as a crisis specialist and be honest with my therapist, they were just so appreciative because a lot of witnesses sit down with therapy and they don't tell the truth. So if I could add something to what Tyshawn is saying, if you are watching this and you do seek therapy, you need to be honest and transparent with everything that you're going through in the hall. Otherwise, your experience is not going to be the full experience to be able to get through your healing.
Right, right.
Right. Well, thank you so much, guys, for watching. You are Healing with Cheryl, and you are watching Tyshawn share her story on Healing Conversations, Heal Her. And until part 3, we'll see you soon.